in the past. So let's bring back former Trump advisor Fred Fleitz, former CIA Deputy Division Chief for the Koreas Bruce Klingner, and Hoover fellow Lan Hee-chen. Now, we've asked each of you to spell out what you think should be a top goal or something the president should accomplish. Lan Hee, we'll start with you. He's got a tough road to hoe here.
Well, I think I'd like to see a little more specificity after Singapore. The Singapore Declaration was quite vague. I'd like to see what are the specific steps that Kim Jong-un intends to commit to. It'd be great if we could get a definition on denuclearization. That's going to be tough, but the actual steps he will take, verification is something I know we're going to talk more about. Actually seeing what that looks like, I think having some specificity around these concepts, and then we can talk about the easing of economic sanctions potentially on our side and what those steps might be. But in the absence of specificity, it's very difficult to really tell whether anything's been accomplished.
Yeah, if you're moving the ball at all. All right, Bruce, you can give us your goal. We also want to talk with you about verification because you have expertise in that area, so however you want to tackle those two.
Right. Well, Secretary Pompeo has repeatedly claimed that Chairman Kim has agreed to dismantle the entire plutonium and uranium enrichment production facilities and totally abandon the nuclear and missile arsenal. North Korea has rejected that claim. So what we need to see is get this in writing. We need to have a common definition on what denuclearization is. It's not global arms control. It's denuclearization of North Korea. We need to get North Korean commitment to international standards of verification. We need to get them to commit to fully abandoning their arsenal and their production capabilities, as well as very early on giving a data declaration of their programs. So that's all, I think, very tangible steps that we need to get very early on.
Any chance we get any of that?
Well, if we don't have that, then we don't have an agreement.
So we've got to have some teeth to this thing to move forward. All right, Fred, your policy goal for the president here this week?
Well, I'd like to see at a minimum an agreement for an inspection of North Korea's nuclear site and a missile production facility. I think we're close to getting that agreement. If we could get inspections of the main nuclear site at Yongbyon, that would be tremendous. There should be a roadmap on when North Korea is going to agree to inspections and dismantlement of other facilities, and also a date and a process on when North Korea will provide a full and thorough accounting of its nuclear, missile, and WMD programs. I mean, that timetable, I think, is very important. I don't know if we'll get that out of the summit, but if we at least started some inspections, I think it would be a big step forward.
Well, and it's interesting this week ahead of this, you've seen a number of Democrats, and especially over in the Senate, I think about Senator Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat there, take to the floor. And they've talked about the fact that Congress is going to have to be a party to anything substantive the president agrees to. So, Lan Hee, I mean, he's negotiating with Kim Jong-un, but he's also going to have to sell this at home, whatever they come up with.
He will have to sell it at home. And I think one of the challenges is we talked earlier about how politics is so imbued with everything we're doing now. And it's unfortunate because if we were able to come up with an agreement that had some teeth, that had some steps forward, I would think there'd be bipartisan support for it. So this is the challenge we're operating in the current environment. There's so much hostility toward the president and what he's trying to do from Democrats in Congress that what I fear is even if there is an agreement that comes forward that presents some actual achievements and accomplishments in moving forward, that maybe Democrats still oppose it, that'd be very unfortunate.
And Bruce, what about South Korean buy-in? Because they have different interests, some aligned with ours and some that are very specific to their nation as well.
Right. The South Korean president is a progressive or a liberal, and he's very interested in improving relations with North Korea and really leaving denuclearization to the U.S. But denuclearization is an international issue, so that's been a source of some friction between Washington and Seoul. But they're also concerned about things like an ICBM-only deal, where if the U.S. is focusing just on protecting our American homeland, which Secretary Pompeo seems to be hinting at, that would not only leave our South Korean but also our Japanese allies very concerned. They're concerned that we will only focus on our protection and not those of our allies. So a peace declaration sounds good, but really it's a meaningless gesture. It does nothing to reduce the nuclear, missile, or conventional force threat. So we need to work towards a peace treaty, but we need to get the North Korean conventional threat reduced before we sign any kind of document.
Okay, and Fred, before we get cut off, I also want to bring in the issue of Russia. I mean, North Korea has been having conversations and relationship with them too, and they clearly have a different interest than the U.S. does in these deals.
I think that's exactly right. I think Russia has been violating UN sanctions. I think that has picked up recently. I think China is also. We need to keep the pressure on Russia and China. And, you know, jumping back to South Korea, I think South Korea is far too interested in making a deal with North Korea before North Korea offers anything. So we need to keep the pressure on until North Korea